This will be a section on the Roman Empire, which is going to be roughly pages 688 all the way to 695. Not everything will be read that is on the pages that you are reading. However, all that is blue and red as far as headings and subheadings, that will be read. So, the Roman Republic. All roads lead to Rome. Rome was not built in a day. When in Rome, do as the Romans do. Have you ever heard these sayings before? All of them were inspired by the civilization of ancient Rome, a civilization that collapsed more than 1500 years ago. Why would people today use sayings that relate to so old a culture? They refer to Rome because it was one of the greatest and most influential civilizations in history. In fact, we can still see the influence of ancient Rome in our lives. Rome was not always so influential, however. At first, it was just a small city in Italy. According to legend, the city of Rome was established in the year 753 BCE by a group called the Latins. For many years, the Romans were ruled by kings. Not all of these kings were Latin, though. For many years, the Romans were ruled by a group called the Etruscans. The Romans learned a great deal from the Etruscans. For example, they learned about written language and how to build paved roads and sewers. Building on what they learned from the Etruscans, the Romans made Rome into a large and successful city. Not all of Rome's kings were good leaders or good people. Some were cruel, harsh, and unfair. The last king of Rome was so unpopular that he was overthrown. In 509 BCE, a group of Roman nobles forced the king to flee the city. In place of the king, the people of Rome created a new type of government. They formed a republic, which is a type of government in which people elect leaders to make laws for them. Once elected, these leaders made all government decisions. To help make some decisions, Rome's leaders looked to the Senate, a council of rich and powerful Romans who helped run the city. By advising the city's leaders, the Senate gained much influence in Rome. For Rome's republican government to succeed, citizens or people who could take part in government needed to be active. Rome's leaders encouraged citizens to vote and run for office. As a result, speeches and debates were common in the city. One popular place for these activities was in the Forum, the city's public square. After the creation of the Republic, the Romans began to expand their territory. They started this expansion in Italy. As the map at right shows, however, the Republic kept growing. By 100 BCE, the Romans ruled much of the Mediterranean world. The Romans were able to take so much land because of their strong, organized army. They used this army to conquer their rivals. For example, the Romans fought the people of Carthage, which is a city in North Africa, and took over their lands. Rome's expansion did not stop in 100 BCE. In the 40s BCE, a general named Julius Caesar conquered many new lands for Rome. Caesar's conquest made him very powerful and very popular in Rome. Afraid of Caesar's power, a group of senators decided to put an end to it. They banded together and killed Caesar in 44 BCE. The murder of Julius Caesar changed Roman society completely. The Romans were shocked and horrified by his death, and they wanted Caesar's murderers to be punished. One of the people they called on to punish the murderers was Caesar's adopted son Octavian. Octavian's actions would reshape the Roman world. Under his leadership, Rome changed from a republic to an empire, a government that includes many different peoples and lands under a single rule. Octavian moved quickly to punish his uncle's murderers. He led an army against them and before long defeated them all. After defeating his enemies, Octavian became more powerful. One by one, he eliminated his rivals for power. Eventually, Octavian alone ruled the entire Roman world as Rome's first emperor. As emperor, Octavian was given a new name, Augustus, which means honored one. The people of Rome respected and admired Augustus. This respect was mainly the result of many accomplishments. As the map shows above on page 691, Augustus added a great deal of territory to the empire. He also made many improvements to lands already in the empire. For example, he built monuments and public buildings in the city of Rome. He also improved and expanded Rome's network of roads, which facilitated both travel and trade. The emperors who ruled after Augustus tried to follow his example. Some of them worked to add even more land to the empire, others focused their attentions on improving Roman society. Because of these emperors' efforts, Rome experienced a long period of peace and achievement. There were no major wars or rebellions within the empire, and trade increased. This period, which lasted for about 200 years, was called the Pax Romana, or the Roman Peace. Because the Pax Romana was a time of stability, the Romans were able to make great cultural achievements. Some of the advances made during this time continue to affect their lives even today. One of the areas in which the Romans made visible advances was architecture. The Romans were great builders, and many of their structures have stood for centuries. In fact, you can still see Roman buildings in Europe today, almost 2,000 years after they were built. This is because the Romans were skilled engineers who knew how to make their buildings strong. Buildings were not the only structures that the Romans built to last. Ancient roads, bridges, and aqueducts, channels used to carry water over long distances, are still seen all over Europe. Planned by skilled Roman engineers, many of these structures are still in use. Not all Roman achievements are easy to see as buildings, however. For example, the Romans greatly influenced how we speak and write and even think today. Many of the languages spoken in Europe today, such as Spanish, French, and Italian, are based on Latin, the Romans' language. English, too, has adopted many words from Latin. The Romans used the Latin language to create great works of literature. Among these works were some of the world's most famous plays, poems, and stories. Many of them are read and enjoyed by millions of people around the world today. Even more important to the world than their literary achievement, however, were Roman political contributions. All around the world, people use the legal system based on ancient Roman law. In some countries, the entire government is based largely on the ancient Roman system. One such country is the United States. The founders of our country admired the Roman government and used it as a model for our government. Like ancient Rome, the United States is a republic. We elect our leaders and trust them to make our laws. Also, like the Romans, we require all people to obey a set of basic written laws. In ancient Rome, these laws were carved in stone tablets and kept on display. In the United States, they are written down in a document, the Constitution. In addition to art and law, the ancient Romans also had tremendous influence on religion. One of the world's major religions, Christianity, first appeared and spread in the Roman world. Christianity is based on the life and actions and teachings of Jesus of Nazareth. He and his followers lived in the Roman territory of Judea in southwest Asia. They converted many people in Jerusalem and other cities in Judea to Christianity. However, Christianity spread far beyond the borders of Judea. Jesus' followers traveled widely, preaching and spreading his teachings. Through their efforts, communities of Christians began to appear in cities throughout the Roman world. Christian ideas spread quickly through these cities, and more people converted to Christianity. The rapid spread of Christianity worried some Roman leaders. They feared that Christianity would soon grow larger than all other religions in the empire. If that ever happened, they feared the Christians might rebel and take over Rome. To prevent a rebellion, some emperors began to persecute or punish Christians. They arrested, fined, or even killed any Christians they found. The persecution did not cause people to abandon Christianity, however. Instead, Christians began to meet in secret, hiding their religion from the government. Eventually, the persecution was ended. In the 300s, a powerful emperor named Constantine became a Christian himself. Once the emperor had converted, the Christian faith was openly accepted and even more widely in the empire. If you look at the map below on page 693, you will see how Christianity spread between 300 and 400. Even after Constantine became Christian, many people in the Roman Empire did not convert. Romans continued to practice many different religions. Over time, however, Rome's leaders supported Christianity more and more. By the 380s, support for Christianity had grown so much that the emperor chose to ban all other religions. With that ban, Christianity was the only religion allowed in the Roman Empire. By the end of the 300s, the Christian church had grown into one of the most influential forces in the Roman world. As the church was growing, however, many other parts of the Roman society were falling apart. The Roman Empire was ending. Rome's problems had actually started long before 300. For about a century, crime rates had been rising and poverty had been increasing. In addition, the Roman systems of education and government had begun breaking down, and many people no longer felt loyal to Rome. What could have happened to cause these problems? Many of Rome's problems were the result of poor government. After about 200, Rome was ruled by a series of bad emperors. Most of these emperors were more interested in their own happiness than ruling well. Some simply ignored the needs of the Roman people. Others raised taxes to pay for new buildings or wars, driving many Romans into poverty. Frustrated by these bad emperors, some military leaders tried to take over and rule Rome in their place. In most cases, though, these military leaders were no better than the emperors they replaced. Most of them were poor leaders. In addition, fighting between rival military leaders almost led to civil war on many occasions. Rome did have a few good emperors who worked furiously to save the empire. One emperor feared that the empire had grown too large for one person to rule. To correct this problem, he divided the empire in half and named a co-ruler to help govern. Later, the Emperor Constantine built a new capital, Constantinople, in what is now Turkey, nearer to the center of the Roman Empire. He thought that ruling from a central location would help keep the empire together. These measures helped restore order for a time, but they were not enough to save the Roman Empire. Although internal problems weakened the empire they alone probably would not have destroyed it. However, as the empire was getting weaker from within, invaders from outside also began to attack in late 300s and 400s Common Era. Already suffering from their own problems, the Romans could not fight off these invasions. Most Roman people considered the various groups who invaded their empire barbarians, uncivilized, and backward. In truth, however, some of these so-called barbarian groups had their own complex societies and strong, capable leaders. As a result, they were able to defeat the Roman armies and take lands away from the empire. In the end, the barbarians were even able to attack and destroy the city of Rome itself. In 476, the last emperor of Rome was overthrown and replaced by the leader of an invading group. Most historians consider the capture of the Roman Empire in 476 the end of the Roman Empire in Western Europe. Although people continued to think of themselves as Romans, there was no empire to tie them together. As a result, European society slowly broke apart.